super common mixer question, right? Like if you've been a part of like a team building business like retreat, this is one of like the go-to mixer questions that you get. If you're meeting with your small group this week, guess what your mixer question is gonna be? If you were stranded on a desert island or a deserted island, name 3 things you would bring with you. And it's always usually these come with like some sort of list like this. Like what are you gonna pick? Obviously, it's the Bible, right? Right? That's what your pastor says. I always thought it was interesting. Like on Survivor, there was always like one person that brought their Bible, and I'm like, great. You're only there for like 30 days, or you could just memorize it, and then you don't need to pick that as one of your choices. That could work. That could work too. But there are a few items I want to suggest that on the island of life we bring. Here's what I'm picking, for today anyway. We are going to grab a light, flashlight. We want the flashlight. Hard to see in the dark. Want to see where I'm going. Don't want to get bit by a snake at night, that kind of thing. We're bringing a first aid kit. Because if I'm like stranded on a desert island, I probably went through like a shipwreck or something. I'm clumsy. I'm going to get hurt. I know I need it. And I want a solar-powered generator. Solar-powered generator there with me to power things up. After all, I'm going to need to charge my battery in my flashlight or whatnot. But why I want to use these 3 things is because I think these 3 images encapsulate what Jesus provides for us as we are stranded. We are on a deserted island of earth post-fall. In this world, we are stranded here, but we're not stranded with nothing. We have a flashlight, we have a first aid kit, we have a generator. These things are useful to us for these reasons. Because I want to suggest this. We are lost. We are lost. Part of being on a deserted island means I'm going to say, it's not just any deserted island. We don't know which one. We're lost. We don't know where we are. We don't know where to go. Without Jesus, we're lost. We're without direction. And it's dark. So not only do we not know where to go, we can't even see where to go. And one of the things that Jesus does for us is provides a light that directs us forward and makes reality clear. We are weak. Go back to we are weak. We don't have the energy that it takes to survive long term in this world, let alone in the next. We simply don't have what it takes. And we are broken. We're hurt. We're not functioning the way that we designed to function. We've taken some battle scars along the way, some because of choices that we've made, because of the dumb things that we have done, and others because we've been around other people when they've made bad choices, and we've taken the shrapnel from that. And so we're hurting. We're broken, we're weak, we're lost. These are 3 prerequisites almost to engaging with Jesus. Because until we recognize that we are these things, we won't see our need for Jesus. Until we recognize and own that we don't know where we're going, that we don't have what it takes, and that we are broken and messed up people, it's hard to see our need for Jesus. And in today's world, that can be the hardest part of the first step. Is our pride prevents us from recognizing that we're even on this island. We refuse to recognize that we are even in trouble because we've convinced ourselves that we are self-sufficient and have what it takes. It comes out whenever you don't want to ask for directions at that gas station, right? Or you're like, I don't need my GPS. I can get there on my own, really. Until you can't. I can lift this. I know that I'm 50 now, but I can lift this without help. and then the back gets thrown out. Really, I don't need to go to the doctor. I don't need any medicine. I'm fine, says especially the nurses in our congregation. The irony that's there. Our pride prevents us from recognizing the situation that we're in. But these are truths. We are lost. We don't know where we're going. It's dark. We are weak. We are broken. But the good news is that we don't have to stay that way because of Jesus. Jesus brings direction to the lost, strength to the weak, and healing to the broken. These things kind of headline, if you will, the mission of Jesus, as we'll see in the Gospel of Matthew today. I alluded to it last week, but Jesus' mission is characterized by these things. It's characterized by him bringing direction to the lost, by bringing strength to the weak, by bringing healing to the broken. We see this happen all throughout the ministry of Jesus, and this is how Matthew opens the ministry of Jesus for us, because these are his priorities. I want us to see that these are the priorities of Jesus in his mission on earth. These are the things that he does first and foremost, and these are the things that he does over and over again. And so Matthew opens, and he tells us right away what Jesus is up to. He's just finished his temptations in the wilderness. He has been doing some ministry. But his ministry is going to start in full force. This is Matthew 4. There should be a 1 there. It's starting with verse 12. When Jesus heard that John had been put in prison, he withdrew to Galilee. This isn't because he was afraid. He's not afraid, and he's like, oh, John got arrested. Let me leave because I'm afraid. No, it's like, okay, John's in prison now. His ministry is officially over. The forerunner, the announcer, his ministry is over. It's go time for Jesus. That's what Jesus is doing here. He's not running, he's activating. John is in prison now. Jesus is up. And he's about ready to do what he came to do. So leaving Nazareth, he went and lived in Capernaum, which was by the lake in the area of Zebulun and Naphtali. Which is weird that he tells us this. And he's like, according to the old tribes, Zebulun was Nazareth and Naphtali was Capernaum. That's the area where those tribes of Israel originally settled before Assyria took them away. And he tells us this because he's about ready to allude to an Old Testament passage, as we see Matthew do all the time. Because Matthew's writing to the Jewish people, trying to show them that Jesus is the Messiah and that he's fulfilling these prophecies. There's 10 times in the book of Matthew where this happens. This is already number 5. We're only in chapter 4. To fulfill what was said through the prophet Isaiah. This is what Isaiah says. This is right before this whole passage about the wonderful counselor and so on. Land of Zebulun and land of Naphtali. The way of the sea, beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. The people living in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. He's just saying, Isaiah said that the light was going to come to Zebulun and Naphtali. That's the area around the Sea of Galilee. That's where Jesus starts his public ministry. And it's interesting here, he calls it Galilee of the Gentiles. Isaiah does. Because we have clues already in the book of Isaiah and the prophecies about the Messiah that the Gentiles are going to be welcomed into the family of God. This is very important for Matthew. He's writing to Jews who don't really love the Gentiles, right? And so he's going to try over and over again throughout the book to show them how the Gentiles coming in was a part of the plan the whole time. And so he's starting early. And he's saying, Jesus came to the Gentiles. That's what Isaiah said. He cares about them too. Of the people living in darkness, they've seen a great light. And so we get our flashlight out. Jesus brings light to the lost by revealing God's truth. He brings light to the lost by revealing God's truth. You see that light metaphor all throughout the scriptures. Jesus calls himself the light. He is the light. But what's that mean? It means that he shows us the true nature of reality. He shows us what actually is. He shows us what our design actually looks like. Like God made us in a certain way, to live a certain way if we want to flourish in the most abundant life possible. Jesus shows us what that is as he lives it out, as he proclaims it with his mouth. Jesus is a man of truth. He dares to tell people what actually is. Jesus doesn't talk in such a way as, well, in my opinion, the way I see it, he doesn't say that. He says, this is, because he knows the truth. He knows the truth. He reveals the truth. So why don't we all follow the truth? It's because oftentimes Jesus shows us what the truth is, and we see what the truth is, and we're like, I don't really like it, Jesus. Like we're lost. We have the flashlight. He shows us the way to go, and we're like, yeah, I don't think so. I don't want to go there. That looks scary. That looks hard. I don't walk uphill, Jesus. I would prefer a different way, Jesus. But that's not real. Like, Jesus tells us what's real. He tells us how we're designed to live. And when we ignore that, we're not just ignoring him, we're ignoring reality. And if we walk along a path that is not reality, we are going to get even more injured than we already are. It's not surprising that when we refuse to recognize God's truth, our life ends up in shatters. And then yet sometimes we do that and we're like, I wonder why I ended up this way. It's because I chose to ignore Jesus. He showed me what was true. I ignored what he said. I failed to embrace his truth. And I got even more lost than I was before. We've all been there. We've all done that. We've all had those moments in our lives. And the good news is no matter how lost you are, there's still hope to get back on the right path. Jesus doesn't just reveal the truth. He calls people to it. We see it in the next verse. For from that time on, Jesus began to preach. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven has come near. He took over John's line. That's what John the Baptist was saying. And Jesus says, this is the same message. We talked about it a few weeks ago. Follow the light. Turn toward the light. Walk toward the light. Walk in the light. Turn toward Jesus. That's what repentance is. Repentance is the word for turn. Turning away from sin. Turning away from chaos, turning toward that which is good and true and beautiful in God and his Son and his Spirit. Jesus calls people to turn toward him. He doesn't just tell people what is true. He challenges them to embrace it. He calls them to it. For the kingdom of heaven has come near. See, God's truth can only bring direction to our lives if we turn and follow it. It's not enough just to know it. I mean, that's a good first step. Like to know how you're supposed to walk, to know how you're supposed to live, to know who is God. But it doesn't accomplish much if we don't turn and follow it. We have to make that choice. We have to make the decision. It's not enough to grow up in church and know what Jesus teaches. At some point in our lives, we have to make an intentional choice to turn and follow him. Have you made that choice? Or have you just kind of sat and taken in what Jesus has said? Have you made that volitional step of turning toward him and saying, I'm going to walk in your way. I'm going to walk in your light. I'm going to trust you. Because it's only in that moment that we cease to be lost and find the direction that Jesus offers. He offers it to everyone. But it's only actualized when we turn, when we choose to follow him. If you're lost right now, if you feel like your life is in chaos, I invite you to turn to Jesus. Seek direction in him. Ask him which way to go. And when he shows it to you, walk in that way. It's not a suggestion, it's the truth. It's not one among many ways, it is the way. It is the only way to a life of meaning and purpose and wholeness. So Jesus starts off and he preaches truth. It's part of what he does over and over and over again. He preaches truth because we need it, because we're lost, because we don't know it. Here's what else he does. He calls disciples. As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. Come follow me, Jesus said, and I'll send you out to fish for people. At once they left their nets and followed him. Jesus calls people to him. He calls people to grow in him. He calls people to follow him. Here, Simon and Andrew become the first disciples, at least the ones that Matthew mentions. Simon and Andrew leave their fishing nets and come and follow him. Sometimes I think we can misread this. This doesn't mean that they never fished again. It doesn't mean they sold their boats, but it means their priorities changed. They were primarily fishermen. Now they become primarily disciples, apostles, followers of Jesus. There's an identity change that takes place in them. Their identity is no longer as fishermen. Instead, they become disciples and they fish for men. It's not just them. He does it again here. So we've got Simon and Andrew, and going on from there, he saw two other brothers. I guess Jesus likes to call two brothers together. James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. And they were in a boat with their father, Zebedee, preparing their nets. A lot of the stuff I read this week said, basically fishermen hated doing this. Like, it was terrible. Like, their nets got torn all the time. They got stuff stuck in them. Like, more than half of their time was untangling their nets. So that's what they're doing. They're probably happy to be like, yeah, we're done with this. And Jesus called them. And immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. And it's true, like fishermen weren't exactly like the richest people in society, but it was still a good job. Like they were still like, middle class folk. Like fishing, like you had a job, you had an income. It was significant for them to fish less. Also, if you notice in the scriptures, there's an intense loyalty to family that's present in Jewish society. Like, believe it or not, they actually did what their parents told them to do. There was a respect for their elders. They took over the family business. It's what you did. Jesus became a carpenter like Joseph. James and John were fishermen like Zebedee. Yet Jesus calls them to a different primary allegiance. Zebedee was right there, like he's in the boat with them. And Jesus says, come with me. Like there's significant symbolism here. Like even though, like when you even see him, James, son of Zebedee, like we don't necessarily do that today. Like, but so much of your identity was in your family. So much of your identity was in your occupation. And Jesus says, put your identity in me. Follow me primarily. And they do. They become disciples. That's what it means to be a disciple, is to follow Jesus, to make Jesus your rabbi, make Jesus your teacher, to make Jesus the one that you take that direction from. They cease to make their dad their primary source of direction. Fathers, I know sometimes that's hard. Kids still do it today. They probably do it more often, and it's sad when it's not Jesus that they're following instead of you, but something else. But their identity wasn't in their occupation. Their identity wasn't in their family. Their identity was in Jesus, first and foremost. They became disciples. And discipleship is about gaining strength for life as we follow Jesus, growing in our faith. Jesus strengthens his people as they follow and prioritize him above all else. That's one of my short definitions of discipleship. To follow and prioritize him above all else. It doesn't mean we care about nothing else. I still care about other stuff, but what's number one? Number one is following Jesus. It's why I like the image of the solar generator, because you get your energy from the sun, right? To get you through life. I know it's cheesy, but Jesus strengthens his people as they follow and prioritize him above all else. Is Jesus a side priority for you? If you put him on the side, you don't really get the benefit that you're supposed to get out of him. Like, I feel like some of us, like we have the gym membership, but we don't go. Like we think we're going to get strong just because we have the gym membership. We think that we're going to get holy just because we have the church membership. But just having the membership doesn't make you strong in the physical sense. Just having the membership at church doesn't make you strong in the spiritual sense. We actually have to put our faith into action and follow Jesus day in and day out. And as we do that, we grow in our faith. We do get stronger. There's a reason why some of those habits of following Jesus, they're called spiritual disciplines. Discipline, disciple, it takes some work and effort. But the good news is Jesus gives you the strength to do the work that he calls you to do. We're weak. I'm weak. You're weak. But Jesus wants to offer you strength. But there's still responsibility on your part. You got to show up. And you got to work out. Maybe that means that you actually need to come to church more. Maybe that means that you need to get in the Word more. Maybe that means that you need to pray more. Maybe that means you actually need to love people. So hard. So hard. Maybe it means you need to serve of yourself. Maybe it means you need to wrestle some more with where your primary identity is. Are you primarily a child of God? Or are you primarily an engineer? Or are you primarily a member of your family? Jesus calls you to put him number one above all those other identities, because that's the only identity that endures for all eternity. That doesn't mean your job is bad or your family's bad. You should do your job well. You should care for your family well. And you will do those things better if Jesus is your top priority. It's about prioritization, not about like completely ditching the other ones. James and John still came back and saw Dad, but Jesus became primary. Is he primary in your life? Or do you just have the membership? Take advantage of the strength that he offers. One more section of this passage. Jesus went throughout Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and sickness among the people. It's another rehashing, really, of this whole passage. Like, what are the three things Jesus did? He taught, he preached, so he made disciples, he preached, and he healed. Like, that's what he does. He makes disciples, he preaches, and he heals. Like, let's focus on the same things that Jesus focused on. News about him spread all over Syria, and people brought to him all who were ill with various diseases, those suffering severe pain, the demon-possessed, those having seizures, and the paralyzed, and he healed them. Large crowds from Galilee, the Decapolis, that's a Gentile area. It's the Gentile part of the Sea of Galilee. Jerusalem, Judea, in the region across the Jordan. From the other side, Jordan, what's Jordan today? People brought them to Jesus and he healed them. I think one of the things I like to point out when we see miracles of Jesus, when we see healings of Jesus, or that Jesus heals primarily because he's moved by compassion. Jesus heals primarily because he's moved by compassion. Like, whenever people ask Jesus to heal to, like, prove his power, he's like, no thanks. That's not why he heals. He doesn't heal to show you how strong he is. Like, he doesn't need to prove himself to anyone. He heals because his heart cares. Like, that's why he heals. Jesus is hesitant so often for his miracles to be announced because, again, he's not about the power or the fame. But he cares, and he can't, like, help himself because when he sees somebody hurting in front of him, he wants to make it better. That's how he feels about you too. When he sees you hurting in front of him, he wants to make it better. I can't promise you how Jesus will respond in any given situation, but I can promise you that he cares and that he can, and that I trust him to do his thing. Let's still pray for healing like this. It still happens. I never hesitate to pray. Let's ask and imagine big things. Jesus can do them. But let's trust him in whatever he does. And we know that he cares, and we know that he can. He's a healer. He heals us spiritually. He heals us holistically in our lives. First, we have to admit we're broken, though. Jesus heals his people as they bring their brokenness to him in faith. May we see Jesus do this in the scriptures, and may it inspire us to bring our brokenness to him, to bring the brokenness of our friends to him, because he's a healer, because he cares. He sees all the different aspects of brokenness in us, and we're broken in every way. And his desire is to bring healing from that pain. It's part of what happens as we follow Jesus day in and day out of our lives, as he brings healing, as we yield our lives to him, as we trust him in faith. Again, I can't promise you what that will look like, but I can promise you that when you put your faith in Jesus, you will be healed in various ways. You will become more whole than you were before. Sometimes it takes a while for these healings to take place, for us to release our bitterness, to release our hurt, to start to trust people again. That spiritual healing takes a long time. Sometimes physical healing takes a long time. Sometimes God uses medicine to bring about physical healing. He's not opposed to doctors. He partners with technology. So Jesus brings our rescue boat. He brings the light. He brings the strength. He brings the healing. But we have to get on. We have to get on. It's a choice we have to make. Like, the boat's there, but you have to get on. There's not another boat coming. And I think that's the reality that's hard, is because usually we recognize that we're stranded on the island, and it's not too hard to get to that place, but then we have to accept the help that Jesus offers. And when we accept the help, it means that we accept the help as he gives it in his wisdom and not our own. And he only brings one boat. Jesus is the only rescue that God has sent, and he's not sending another. That boat is there. It will be there until Jesus comes again. But there is a time limit on it. That's why it's repent, for the kingdom of God is near. It's near. God's second coming is coming. You better be on the boat. It's offered to you. God offers you direction. He offers you strength. He offers you healing. But you have to go with him. You have to turn toward him. Have you made that choice yet? If you haven't, I'd encourage you to continue to process it, to think about it. What if you already have? I think we do well to notice that Jesus' mission was characterized by preaching, discipling, and healing. And the church would do well to imitate Jesus in these practices. It's like, what are we doing? What are we offering as God's people? What are we calling people toward? May we declare God's truth. May we help people get stronger in their faith. May we bring healing where we see brokenness, because we care like Jesus cares. These are three prongs of ministry of the church and of, disciples. We're called to do these same things. And Jesus will do it in Matthew 28. Once we get to the very end, he'll release us and call us to do these things. But his mission becomes our mission because we're his children. So let's not get sidetracked into other things. May our priorities be these things. Helping people to understand what God's truth is, helping them to grow in strength as they follow him, helping people find healing in the midst of their brokenness. May that be what we're about as a church. May that be what we're about as people, because it's what Jesus was about. We're going to pause now and remember the cross. As it's in the cross that all of these things come together, what God said was going to happen, happens. The cross becomes this vessel of rescue for us. As the one who was God in the flesh came to earth, lived a perfect life among us. And Scott's reminded me that before we go into communion, we are going to sing a song. Continue to reflect on what I said while we sing a song.
I'll take it.